Okay, ready.
So,
You gotta do it though.
I want to switch gears, but it's only going to seem like I'm switching gears, okay? I want to give you another way of looking at a continuing value, all right? I want us to think about this from the standpoint of what's called an enterprise value multiple. If I know the enterprise value of an asset company, and I know the EBIT that that company has for whatever particular period we're looking at, I can divide those two, and I get some number that is a multiple. It's a ratio, right? This is not altogether different from a price-earnings ratio, because enterprise value is the price of the company. Earnings is a form, or EBIT is a form of earnings, right? A price-earnings ratio is predominantly used only in stock purchases, okay, common stock. So when we generalize it like this, we can use it much more broadly. It's called an enterprise value multiple. Well, as I'm forecasting numbers out from years 1 through 4 of my explicit period, and then year 1 of the continuation, which would be really year 5, right? I probably should be able to know what my EBIT is for that year. I probably forecast it out well enough to know, right? And no means a good guess. No doesn't mean no, right? It means a good guess. Nicely educated, well-honed, professional guess. So if I know this, and I have some sense of what this multiple should be, then could I find enterprise value with those two pieces of information? Sure. I could just rearrange this such that enterprise value is equal to EBIT at time 1 times what that multiple is. Well, when we're looking at value or continuing value, what is it that we're estimating? Enterprise value, right? What would it cost to acquire all the rights to all the future cash flow of the asset? That's the enterprise value. So if I know or I have a sense of what this multiple should be, and I know what the EBIT is, I can synthesize the enterprise value. No differently than I synthesized continuing value. Because it is the continuing value at that point, right? It's just looking at it from a different perspective. It's estimating it from a different standpoint. You very often hear, even on Shark Tank, we'll talk about multiples, right? Well, that's 10 times earnings. Or you can't ask for that, that's 22 times earnings. Well, how do they know what that number should look like?
Comparable sales?
Yeah, comparables. We call these public comps and precedent transactions. If any of you are really interested in that in a major way, I have access to some software called Pratt's Stats and Public Stats and PitchBook and Duff & Phelps Cost of Capital Navigator. These are some subscription service tools that we have that help us derive lots of these kind of comparative numbers from other companies, public and private in the marketplace. And so I can look at this company, and let's say it's a sheet metal fabrication company, and it's got between $500,000 and $1 million in revenues, and I can look at other sheet metal manufacturing companies, fabrication companies that have between $500,000 and $1 million in revenues that transacted or sold or had some certified valuation in the last year. And I should be able then, if I'm looking at that valuation and look at the company's EBIT, I then come up with its multiple, right? And if I can look at the broad range of these companies throughout the country, I can come up with some average multiple that it should be. So I'm comparing. Well, as it turns out, there might be another way to do it too.
Can you go back through how you found that multiple?
Yeah, so I would go into, in this case, Pratt Stats and Public Stats, those two software processes I have, or subscriptions I have, and I would put in the SIC code for a sheet metal fabrication company, and I would put in between $500,000 and $1 million in revenues, and it's going to spit out to me all of them that have transacted. And I'm going to look at what their enterprise value EBIT multiple is. and I'm gonna take the average of those perhaps. Or maybe I'll discard this one because it's actually a little bit different, because that's sheet metal fabrication for the marine industry. And maybe I'll scrap this one because it's an outlier. The number is so different than any of the others. But I'll look at all those numbers and I'll come up with a methodology that says, here's the average, or here's the number I'm willing to hang my hat on. And if I want to go a little further, I might compare that to what large metal fab companies in the public markets are doing. And maybe I have to adjust that because my sheet metal fab company is so much smaller than the others. But it's going to give me a sense of what these are. So when you hear them on Shark Tank and such, you throw out these numbers, that's 10 times, or this should go for 4 times earnings. That's what they're doing. They're reaching into the database in the back of their head, right? It's just generalizing this in a big, big way, okay, based on averages. And they're doing it from a standpoint of knowing that the lower the multiple, the lower the valuation, the less we have to spend on the company, such that if the company performs well, the bigger our return, right? Which is what venture capitalists, private equity, and certainly Kevin O'Leary want.
Can you
Right.
say that again about the M? So the lower the multiple.
The lower the multiple, so you have this, look at the equation.
Okay.
The lower the value of M for any given EBIT, is going to create a lower value of enterprise value, right? Okay. So just an order of operations issue. Well, that's kind of interesting. So, I have a problem with this particular equation. As much as I suggested that this is nice, elegant, beautiful, easy, I have a problem with this equation. What is it?
G.
Well, it's G. Okay, but I got another problem that involves G. What happens when G is greater than R?
Oh, it kills it.
By the way, boutiques.
Yeah.
What happens when G is greater than R? Okay. By the way, I didn't give you that problem just because I thought it was interesting. I actually try to be strategic and setting you guys up for stuff, right? So there's no way to overcome that huge negative that is brought about by G being so much bigger than R. Well, I don't know, man. Carlos, don't you want your company to grow more? And in fact, if you came to me and said, Rick, I've got a 20% G and only a 3% cost of capital, I'm growing at 20% a year and my cost of capital is 3%, does that sound like trouble to you? Doesn't sound like trouble to me. That sounds like, that's nirvana, right? Except for, how do you sustain a 20% growth rate when your R is so much less? Remember that R, or WACC, or required return, can that be much different than ROIC? Should it be? Only if we're going to bring something other than money to the table, right? Okay? Only if we're bringing other expertise. So when we have G greater than R, or G greater than WACC, and it builds this negative value, that's a problem for us, right? Because it means this is a negative value, which in most cases means this is a negative value. And that's a problem for us. And what it means is that this company can't sustain that G without more capital investment. That's why it's negative. We need more. We're going to be consuming more capital. That's the problem with it, by the way. Well, some of us look at this as simply being an algebraic constraint, which it kind of is, right?
It's the burn rate, right?
It's got some hint of the burn rate, yeah. I mean, it's a problem because of the burn rate, right? So how do I find a continuing value form that's credible that doesn't have that algebraic problem? I use enterprise value that's a function of EBIT and a multiple. Is it possible for this multiple to be negative? Think about that again. Is it possible? I think what you guys want this to be is you're not thinking it negative, you're thinking about what it is with respect to 1. It can be less than 1, right? But it's only going to be negative if EBIT is negative. Oh, and by the way, if EBIT's negative, we stop. Why bother, right? If EBIT's negative, free cash flow's negative, the firm's got a negative value, why even press the calculator or the Excel button one more time? We're done. Okay. So I'm going to say EBIT is positive. If EBIT's positive, this really ought not to be negative. That ought not to be negative, which means this is not going to be a negative value. And I've eliminated this problem. Okay? So think about this. There's another model form. It's the forward market multiple, where my continuing value now is EBIT times 1 times some multiple. Not divided by R minus G. Just whatever my EBIT is for the first period of my continuation times what the multiple should be. Well, darn. I can find comps to see what maybe it could be. But those comps are always a little bit different than my company, right? I haven't found one that's exactly like mine. That's why these are so illiquid, right? Because they're unique. So I might have to think about a range of M. M runs from 8 through 12, let's say, in our comps and such. And I want to say, well, our company is going to be managed better than most of those. It's got more growth prospects because we're more innovative. We've been putting more money into R&D. We are in green energy rather than old energy, oil, something like that. So I might find an M by comps. I might find an M actually looking at this company, and maybe I know what it's worth from some other methodology. I might find what it's worth from the free cash flow model. That gives me its enterprise value. If I take and divide that enterprise value by EBIT, I have an EV-EBIT multiple, don't I? So, and I might then say, okay, that number, let's say it was 13, was the number we looked at, and I'd say, I'm going to buy this company based upon the present value of its discounted cash flow over the next 5 years, which is its free cash flow, plus some terminal or continuation value, which is going to be the EBIT times this multiple. I'm going to buy it based upon that. But I know that the multiple is simply a performance indicator. It tells me something about the company's growth. It tells me something about the return on investment capital. It tells me something about all these key value drivers. I can intuitively believe that. But we don't have to only intuitively believe it, we can algebraically believe it. And by the way, if I intuitively believe it, then I can also think about how to make that number more than 13. I'm going to buy this based upon a multiple of 13. That sets my price. But I think we can do more with it than that. Look at this for a minute. I know that enterprise value can be equal to no flat times 1 minus G divided by ROIC divided by WACC minus G, right? That's a continuation value in my KVD construction. And continuation value in 5 years from now is the same thing as the estimated enterprise value 5 years from now, right? Okay. I want to create an EV-EBIT multiple using this equation. Can I do it? What does no plat equal? EBIT times 1 minus T is no plat. Can I now create an EV-EBIT multiple with this equation? All I have to do is divide both sides by EBIT. and now I have an EV/EBIT multiple. Well, I told you a second ago that it's going to be all about ROIC, WACC, and G. Well, you kind of see that. It might help you to see it a little bit differently. If I rewrite this equation, I'm going to just quickly rewrite it in its final form rather than take you through all the steps. If you want to know how to go from this to where I'm going right now, you just have to think about how you would algebraically manipulate this. This is going to be equal to ROIC minus G divided by ROIC times WACC minus G times 1 minus T. Believe it or not, this lower equation in black is the same as this upper equation primarily in red. Okay? So now,
What are you solving for on the lower equation?
For
EV.
EV over EBIT.
well, what I'm solving for is EV EBIT. And it's just, all this is, Harry, is I've rearranged this equation algebraically and it equals this. So this and this are the exact same equation. They just algebraically represent it a little bit differently. I like this. Do I have some sense of what the ROIC for the company is? I'm forecasting that right and left, right? Do I know what the WACC is? Then I'm worth my weight in WACC, right? I know what the T is. Yeah, okay. But I'm going to give a number there based on all my best guesses. I can use this to help me understand what this should be. Can't I? So, and I can do it without comparisons. Now, I'm foolish to only do that and then not compare, right? But what if when I compared, I found that the multiple I should use is 12? And so I set a number, and Courtney was selling the company, and she agreed upon my number, and my number was based upon a multiple of 12. And I want to think about what could I actually make out of this company. Because frankly, I don't want to only get in the future a discounted value that's equal to the present value today, right? I want more than that. Is it possible, that using these inputs, I can maybe consider what my multiple should be, could be, my aspirational multiple? Maybe. Or maybe it's just going to tell me the same number, but I'm smart enough to know if it tells me the same number, Brandon and I are sitting in the room, he's the CFO, Dan's the CIO, Matt's the CEO, and I'm the money guy somewhere. I created the money for it. And they say, Rick, we can create a bigger multiple for this company by improving our return on invested capital, by being a little bit more profitable. Let's eke expenses some, let's increase revenue some. We can decrease our WACC by buying back some of the stock in the market, because RE right now is so much bigger than RD. We can reduce our WACC, and when we reduce our WACC, we've run a more profitable company, right? And we can improve the multiple. We see the tools to do it. Remember the DuPont identity for ROE? Profit margin times TAT, or total asset turns, times equity multiplier. And we simply took ROE and broke it into some component parts so that we could then think about how do we improve ROE. It was hard to think about this big nebulous ROE, but when I can think about it in component parts, I can start to think about how I can improve it because I know how to improve profit margin. It's hard to think about how I go from a multiple of 8 to 12 or 11 to 12, but it's easy if I can think about how I improve my ROIC. Can I improve my G? Sure I can, right? This is all managerial. Wes?
Maybe I'm forgetting my seventh grade algebra, which is very possible, but if you improve ROIC and you increase that number, because you're increasing it both on the top and bottom.
I love this part.
Okay.
That's why you also have to decrease the WACC. I mean,
Well, they're both active here. What he's saying is, if we increase it here and increase it here,
It's the same.
then it may not have really changed, but because it's a scalar here and it's additive here, it actually isn't gonna just scale the number, okay? So it's not gonna just be proportional, but what you're getting at really is the relationship between ROIC, WACC, in the face of G. Doesn't that sound familiar? The relationship of ROIC and WACC in the face of G is going to determine whether growth destroys or creates value. And that's why these are the key value drivers. Okay? So this fourth model form is virtually identical to the others, only differing in the way that it looks at continuing value. And the way that it's going to look at continuing value is we're going to
So
take,
great.
pardon?
No, my bad.
We're going to take some continuing value that's equal to EBIT in time one of the continuation time, times some multiple that we have defined either by comparison or calculation or aspiration. And we're then going to take that continuing value divided by 1 plus our discount rate to the power of t, and we're going to add that to get this. And it's called the forward market multiple model. And as it turns out, of the models that we're considering, it's far and away the most commonly used model. In fact, an even simpler form of it is what's used more often than not. And I think that this is, it's somewhere between lazy, foolish, and ignorant to use this, because it is such a bold, broad brushstroke. But the value is equal to the multiple times the cash flow variable. And isn't that how a lot of investment decisions are made? We're going to find out what the cash flow variable is, and we're going to find our multiple, and we're going to interact them in a product, and that's how much we're going to offer to the company. Well, there's a whole class of cash flow of these multiples. They're called enterprise value multiples. Just kind of pass this. Enterprise value multiples. So I'm giving you a quick sheet that's got not all of them, but the most commonly utilized ones. And the one that I prefer for general application is EV equal. But it's going to depend upon the kind of company you're evaluating. Like I said earlier, an early stage company that doesn't have much in the way of EBIT, or maybe negative EBIT, we're going to maybe do EV sales, right? Please.
But isn't that value formula, isn't that just for continuing value?
What if I don't want to think about an explicit period, and I think the growth rate of my cash flow variable is going to be constant?
Okay.
Then my continuing value is my,
Okay.
it encompasses it, right? But yes, that's why I'm saying it's either lazy, naive, ignorant, whatever it is. It's ill-informed because you make such broad generalizations. Is it realistic to think that this company is going to have a constant growth rate between now and the end of, well, I don't know when? No. We know that, okay? So let's be a little more intelligent, let's forecast some things, and then apply it when we have to, right? So it's a different model form. And it's kind of an interesting model form.
So why would you use one of these versus the other? Or where would you use one of these?
Depends on the kind of company. So I'll just use 3 of them, and that I've already talked about a little bit. And I'll also tell you one I probably would never use, by the way. I would virtually never use EV units, the last one in the top section. Like that's just I would never use this one, EV
Right.
units.
What's units referring to? Units of?
The units of output.
Oh.
Yeah, so we make cars, we output 100,000 cars in a year. Who cares? How does that really help me with my enterprise value? That makes some assumptions about standardized values that is just way too broad. But this is one you're going to find in some textbooks. And in fact, if you look at the primer on multiples that I have online for you from NYU Stearns, it's included in there. Okay, I've just never used it. I don't know anybody who uses it. Okay, but it's there. So I included it for you. I like EV/EBIT. In fact, for the vast majority of companies, I would use EV/EBIT. If it's a company that has high capitalized assets, for which depreciation is a big deal, meaningful, I might use EV/EBITDA, okay? And so that's depreciation and amortization, that's the DA, and amortization is simply depreciation of an intangible asset, okay? So they're both depreciation. And goodwill and patents are the most common intangible assets, and technology is going to be patented, right? And then, you know, there are some that are going to use the EV sales, and that's going to be where the company is so early stage that its EBIT or EBITDA isn't a reliable indicator of its performance, because we still got some burn going on, right? And we're still trying to figure out which end is up. But we're selling. We're getting something going. And there's a belief that if we're selling, we're going to ultimately have a positive EV, right? I might think about EV FCF, EV free cash flow. And you might suppose that's where I would go first, right? Because I said that free cash flow is kind of the king of all cash flow variables. But it has inherent in it some decisions we made about our net capital spending, how we have managed our current assets and current liabilities. So maybe I don't always like that. I don't always like that as a ratio, okay? One of the problems that you're going to deal with, not next week, but I think the week after, in fact, maybe it's the last problems that you deal with, will include the forward market multiple. In fact, I gave you a little bit of a hint of its utility in this last problem set, didn't I? Where you had to think about, and I gave you an EV FCF or EV cash flow and said it was equal to 10. That was you using the forward market multiple, okay? Which is actually very simple to use. Okay, let's spend some time in the calculator. Can we do that?
Sure.
How many of you feel like you know how to use this time value functions well?
On a calculator?
On a financial calculator. So Anya, you do. Both you guys can. I'm not surprised. I would expect you guys. Okay, so this might be a little boring, and I apologize. And pipe in here where you think there's some keystrokes that maybe we should be talking about, but I'm not thinking to. Which one? Okay. Okay, so let me give you some general things about this. I had my HP 12C in my pocket one day, and you know, I put my hands in my pocket, I put out my keys and coins and that kind of thing, pull it out of my pocket, and I saw underneath all my zeros it said beg. And I couldn't figure out what the heck beg meant. And I realized it was, beginning versus end. How did it get there, and how to get rid of it? Because when we think about interest is either charged at the beginning of a period or the end of a period, right? And typically, 99 times out of 100, or maybe more even, it's going to be end. So the default is end, and it's such a default that it never says end. It only says beginning, because that's what's odd or different. So you're going to find on one of these keys that it says BEG, and I'm looking for it because I almost never use it. BEG, and where is it?
Second row, the way to the right.
Yep, right here. Okay, second row down in red, the far right hand key. So if you have somehow gotten BEG on here, that's how to get rid of it. It's a toggle switch. So right now mine says BEG. I want to get rid of that. Red, BEG. So the secondary keys, red and blue, activate the secondary commands in red and blue. The white commands, you don't need to activate them separately. They're default activated. Okay? One of the other things that I found that I would do sometimes is...
BEG, right?
Pardon me?
We want BEG.
No.
We don't.
No want BEG. Bad BEG. What kind of finance uses beginning? What kind of a loan uses beginning? A discount rate loan that is not even allowed in consumer finance in most states in the country because it's so confusing to consumers now. It's a discount rate. Or not a discount rate loan, a discount rate. So you, the minute that you borrow the money, all of the interest is charged for the life of the loan. And then you start paying that. It's usurious. Okay. So every once in a while, I would pull this out of my pocket and find, instead of saying 0.000, it says 0,000. What's that about?
No, yours was doing it.
Oh, yeah.
That's European notation, okay? European notation very often is different than ours. In fact, it is different than Western notation. And so 0.000 is 1,000, comma, decimal points, okay? So you have another toggle switch. It's activated by the red key, and it's the bottom row right in the middle, okay? So if you you probably would, because you got this whole accenty thing going on, okay? So here in this country where you're going to make your money, okay, we're going to use periods where they belong and commas where they belong, okay? So red, and press that key, and it takes it back to for real, okay?
Is it that way in Italy? I know it's that way in France. It's a little traumatizing.
Through much of Europe. In fact, I don't think in finance in Europe it's that way, but in common consumption.
Oh, yeah,
consumer,
yeah.
yeah.
Teach us.
Yeah, please.
How do you switch it from 2 decimal places to 4?
That's where we're going next.
Okay.
Okay.
Look at that.
So if I were you, I would always keep this on 4 decimals.
Okay.
I would only change it when I want to purposely have it for something else, but I would always keep it on 4. And I never remember what the stroke is. It's going to be a number. So I think it's 4 red display. No, it must be red display 4. Yep. Okay, so if you want to, if it's on 2 right now and you want to change it to 3, red display, and display is on the bottom row, second button from the right. So red display 3 will give you 3 decimals. Red display 5 will give you 5. Keep it on red display 4. Okay. Why do I think 4 is such a good number?
Basis points.
I think you said because you were anal.
You want to look for rounding
I
errors?
assign grades in 4 weeks. 4 weeks.
I've done it.
No, okay. Because if you're calculating something that is a quotient and that you then use as a percentage, if it's 4 decimal places, when you multiply it by 100 to put it into a percentage, it still has 2 places of fidelity. Because I promise you 10.4 is very different than 10, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why. You can always have more. I would never have less. And if you're going to have more, make sure that you're very comfortable with visually rounding a number, right? Because very often on your problems, I ask you to give the answer in 2 decimal places, right? So if you're going to have more than that, be very comfortable. If we have a number that is say 10.345, what is that number when I round it to 2 decimal places? Is it 10.34 or 10.35?
5.
Yeah, because 5 we round up. People get that confused because it's like in the middle there. 5 we round up. Okay, good. I use the memory function a lot. Because sometimes, like in the bond value calculation, if you're not doing it in Excel and you're not using the time value, you're actually working through the equation. I prefer to store my answers rather than write them down, because I never write them down with 50 decimal places. Maybe 3, maybe 4, right? But even 4 loses a little bit of fidelity. So let me show you how to store a number. So I've done 5 times 8 equals 40. So 40 is on my display right now. I want to store that. I'm going to play red STO, and STO is in the 4th row, 2nd button from the left. Okay? STO means store, storage. So red STO, and then I can store that to drawer 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through 9. Right? I got 10 places to store it. So I'm going to put it in drawer number 1. So I just press 1. So red STO 1. And I just stored that number 40 in a place, okay? It's somewhere in the calculator. So if I've cleared, or if I got some other number on here, and I want to bring red back, or I want to bring 40 back, Now it's the recall key, which is the same key as the STO key, but it doesn't have, you don't have to activate it with a color. Recall 1, and it gives me 40. And if it's 40, it's no big deal. If it's 3.7892435, that's a big deal, right? Okay, if I don't want to remember it. And yeah, so any number on your display, you can store it by pressing red, STO, and then you can store it to any one of the keys 0 through 9. You have 10 places to store things.
Do you have to press anything after that then?
Pardon me?
Do you press anything after that?
So yeah, red, STO, and then the key number.
number.
So like 1, and it's stored.
And then clear.
Okay.
So how do you recall them?
Then you recall it by pressing recall 1. And recall is the same button, Chris. It's just not activated by a color. It's RCL.
How do we delete it from this message?
You can clear all,
So do
and clear all is red C.
now, let's do
Red C.
red,
Okay.
4.
So I use the storage function a lot when I'm doing complex numbers, because even though there may only be 2 digits stored on the screen, it's going to displaying on the screen. It stores the whole number. And I don't remember if this calculates after the 50th or the 99th decimal place. It's one of those two. I don't remember which one. It's far enough out that it's good.
So even if you saved it with only 4
It
displayed, it saves
it's
everything.
yeah, the whole thing, because it displayed 4, but it really knew the whole number. So if I do 5 divided by 68, it tells me 0.07353, right? I don't want to just do 0.07. And it's actually not 0.07353. That number keeps going,
going,
right? It stores as big as the number is, and it's either to the 50th decimal or the 100th. Lynn, is that a hand?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
So when I do a calculation, it has a P and D pin on the right. What is that?
Means you have an option.
PND?
You haven't hit equals yet.
Pending something,
Oh,
yeah.
maybe? Yeah.
Probably.
So, yeah, no, thank you. So the architecture here is something, operator, something equals, okay? So it's forward notation, all right? So those are some little things. So let's look at some of the time value functions real quick. And I know I discussed this with you before you all had these, but let's assume for a minute that I want to put $500 a month away into my 401k. Over the next 20 years. And I then want to see how much that's going to give me. Because that should give me something, right? Okay. So it's going to be a monthly, so I need to have 12 periods per year. And so I've got to set that internally. It's the one thing that doesn't clear when you do clear all. Everything else clears, all other inputs clear. So I want to have 12 periods per year, and it's going to be then 12 red PYR. So I'm going to put in whatever the number, red, and then it's going to open up the secondary, top row, second button from the right, PYR. So I'm now at 12 periods per year, so I can think of monthly now, okay? So I now clear this, not clear all, just the C key, okay?
Okay.
Courtney, can I help?
Wait, so you're saying
Are we good? Okay, so I want to think about what I'm going to have in 25 years if I put away $500 a month at 7%. Okay, so $500 is a positive or negative?
Negative.
I'm going to do it as negative because it's leaving me, which means that the end result's going to be positive, right? Now that's a personal preference. It's just the one that makes the most sense generally for me. So 500, and I want to change the sign to negative because you don't type it in as a negative. Above the blue key is plus minus. That's a toggle switch. It's binary condition. Okay. So now I've got negative 500. I'm going to press PMT. I'm on the top line functions, right? And it's 25 years. Well, I know that this calculator is smart enough to put interest in annualized figures, but not smart enough to put periods in annualized figures. So 25 years times 12 equals, so it's 300 periods, and that's my N. So your N has to be the number of periods, not the number of years. The number of periods.
12, you said 25?
Yeah, 12 times
Times
25.
20.
Yeah, because 12 months times 25 years, so I think that's 300 periods.
And then just
And that would be
push
what?
N.
That's 25 years worth of monthly periods. And that's gonna be N. See the top row up on the left?
That makes sense.
N is the number of periods.
Yeah, I already multiplied.
Okay? So now I have N, I've got payment. I need to put in the interest rate. So I said it was 7%. That's not 0.07, it's 7. 7.5 would be 7.5, okay? So 7I divided by YR, interest per year. Second button from the left on the top line. So I've told it time, rate, payment, and I want to solve for future value, right? What is present value?
Zero?
Why?
You have an input value.
I haven't started yet, right? Okay, so 0 present value. Now honestly, if you didn't tell it was 0 present value, because you cleared everything, it knows 0. I just am a little anal. So I always tell them, okay? And now all I have to do is press FV, and it tells me the future value is positive, because that's what I'm gonna get. And that's $405,035. So I have an N equaling 12 months times 25 years, or 300. I have I divided by YR, which is interest, equaling 7. I have payment equaling -500. I've got present value equaling 0. And I have defined 4 variables, so with one equation I can find the 5th, right? And that's all it's doing. Do you know what equation it's using?
The bond value equation?
A variant on it, yes, yes. It's the present value of an annuity equation. Present value of an annuity is equal to the payment, which has to be a constant payment, because we only have one place to put it, right? So it must be the same payment always, times 1 minus 1 divided by 1 plus, and I'm going to use R, to the N divided by R. That's what it's using. And frankly, it's taking it a little bit further, plus future value divided by 1 plus R to the N. So you know this first part is the present value of an annuity, the second part is the present value of a figure in the future, right? And together they're the bond value calculation. Okay?
And if it's annuity due, that's when it becomes the beginning.
Say again.
If it's present value of annuity due, then that's when you change it to the beginning format, or no?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
What's
An
the
annuity
difference
due
between-
would be like I borrowed money today and I have to pay it back in constant payments. No.
Okay, okay.
No. Yeah, there is a class of annuity that we think about it from the other perspective, but to be honest with you, I've never dealt with them. I intellectually understand them, I practically don't.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, so see if you can't replicate this number. 405,035.8465. You should be able to use those inputs to get it.
Like writing it down?
No, with the time value function on the calculator.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. See, for you it's no big deal because you know this well, but for some of them they came up with a different number because they didn't use the right keystroke structures and stuff. Okay?
Oh, one thing also was the recall button. If you're not sure what you entered, you can do recall N. It will tell you what number you inputted in there.
Say that again?
Like if you do recall N, it will tell you that you put 300 in there. Because sometimes if you fat finger something, you're like, wait,
Cool.
did I enter 300 or
I didn't know that.
301?
So recall and then
Whatever you want to look up, recall payment, and it will show you -500. If you do recall Y, it will show you 7.
Very cool. I didn't know that.
And his video number 4, class number 2. has
Walks through all this.
In case you guys forget.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Okay, so I want to say so what for a minute. So $405,035 is a penny. So what? How do I think about that number today? Because this number is in 25 years, right?
It's a lot of bread.
Well, it's a lot, or is it? Or is it? I think it's a lot of money,
Or is it?
or is it?
20 years, is that really gonna be worth it?
Thank you. So what I wanna now do is I wanna think about that number as a future value discounted annually at inflation to get to a present value, so I can think about what that number really means. Because right now, that looks like a big a number, to me, right? So let's think about this. I just said I want to do it annually, so I need to go one red PYR to have one period per year. So I'm going to do a clear all. I do a clear all a lot, by the way.
The
So,
red C?
Pardon me?
The red.
The
Yeah,
red?
red C, and then I'm going to do one red PYR. And when you do clear all, it tells you how many periods per year. So when it flashed 12, that told us 12 periods a year. So now I want to think about that number as a future value.
Wait.
So do one, right?
I want to think about, I'm going to say that interest or inflation is at 3%.
And then do clear all.
N is 25.
Red clear all.
Payment
And then it's one.
is 0.
So you can check.
So let's walk through and make sure we understand that. So the future value part's easy, right? This is when we calculate it's worth that in the future. If I now want to bring it back at some rate of inflation, which I hopefully is different than my rate of investment, right? That becomes my I divided by YR. I did it, since that's an annualized value, I've turned it into one period per year, and I'm gonna have 25 years. But I'm not adding or subtracting any payments, I'm just trying to see then and now, no financial activity in the middle other than this discount rate, okay? So, I've done this, 405,035.8465, and that's future value. And then 25N, 0 payment, 3I divided by YR. It does not make any difference what order in which you gave it these inputs. That you give it all the inputs that you're not solving for is what's important.
What was the three? I
I divided by YR, I gave it 3, that's interest per year, and in this case, interest to me is inflation, okay? That's how money in the society changes value. And then I can press present value, and it comes up with a different number. And the number it came up with for present value is equal to 193,447.3760. And all of it actually gave me that as a negative number because I put in the future value as a positive. Okay?
Oh, I didn't put payment 0.
Yeah, payment's got to be 0. And what's that telling us? Brandon, what's that telling us?
Present value?
Yeah, what's this 193?
That's what it would grow to inflation.
If it's this in the future, this is the real value in today's dollar, adjusted for inflation. Well, I was impressed with 405 grand. I'm not unimpressed with $193,000, right? But that's a big difference. We're at about a $212,000 difference.
Oh, because we input inflation.
Yeah, we gave it the number. This is our I divided by YR. That's our discount rate, the rate at which money is changing value. Not our opportunity cost of capital now. This was inflation.
That's
Yeah.
25 years though, right?
25 years.
So how is that, I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, but is that pretty good over 25 years? $300,000?
Is
Before we did 300.
to get to this? Well, 7%.
Okay.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
But this is saying at an inflation rate of 3%, $405 in 25 years is worth $193,000.
Yeah. So if Harry gives me $405, 25 years from now, it's only worth $193 to me today. That's what it's saying. Yeah.
My PV was negative, is that?
Yeah, it was because your future value is positive. It's an input-output. Remember that I said in no world of algebra that I know can the right hand of the equation be positive and the left hand be negative, right? If negative equals something, it's got to equal negative, right? But in this world, negative equals positive because of the architecture, not because of algebra.
Why did we do N 300 to analyze the future value, and now that we're doing present value is 25.
Because we were making monthly payments, okay?
You could annualize 500.
I could have said $6,000 payments, but I would miss a little bit of compounding, wouldn't I? And I don't like missing compounding, I like compounding, when I'm earning. I don't like compounding when I'm paying, right? Yeah, that's why. Yes?
But how do you apply that present value to the money that you're paying? Like,
I don't.
see the relationship.
You're trying to do apple and orange. Here we are, and I've convinced you, I'm your investment guy. I've convinced you to put away $50 a month for the next 30 years. And today that's hard for you to do, but in 5 years it won't be, in 20 years it's a rounding error, right? And you come up with a number and it says it's worth $25,000 in I don't know how many years. And I say, wow, isn't that great? And you're looking at me and say, wait a minute, $25,000 in 30 years. Well, based on inflation, that's worth an apple and an orange to me. It's not that big a deal, okay? So just to see a number in the future, let's know what it's worth to us today. Here's another way of thinking about this. So here we have that number, and I know that I can take that $405,000 in the future, and I can then get some income monthly off of it for the next 20 years, right? I can annuitize it, if you will, okay? And it's going to give me some big number. So let's think about that. Let's put that back in as our present value. Let's go back to 12 periods per year, 12 red PYR. I want to know what this amount of money that I'm going to get in the future at a point, because of all my investment between now and then, I want to know what it's going to give me for the next 20 years as part of my retirement income. Okay? So I've got the $405,035. If I had stored this number, I wouldn't have to do this. That's my present value. I want that as a negative because I'm going to have to put it into an account to get money back. And I think I'm going to be able to be retired for 20 years. So I've got, since it's monthly, it's going to be 20 times 12, right? So 20 times 12 equals, and that's my N. And I believe in retirement, I'm going to be more conservative in my investment expectations than while I'm building it. So I'm not going to be looking for a 7% return. I'm only going to look for a 5% return. So 5, I divided by YR. So I've told it N, interest. I've told it present value. I need to tell it future value. 0. Why, Harry?
Because you want all of it by the end of 20 years.
Yeah, at the end of the 20 years, I'm dead. I want it to be gone.
So because you're looking for.
No, I want the last check I write to bounce. Not any between now and then, but the last one I'm okay with. The last one. Yeah, Les?
Okay, I've done this probably about 5 times now, and I'm getting about $2,000 off every single time.
Which are you getting?
On the present value, sorry, I'm getting 191,504.
So this?
Are you doing 25 or 300?
300.
Oh, no.
Do 25.
This,
So
yeah.
So when I do 25,
You're
I got
solving for
like
payment in this.
negative 300,000.
Perfect. It has to be negative.
Yeah, but it's
like
like
negative
300.
300.
You'd have to.
So let's walk through it together, okay? West, clear all.
What's that word?
So red, clear.
Real.
And then we're gonna do 1 red PYR.
No, wait, tú lo buscas en español.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch Okay, so let me take the rest of this, and then we're gonna wrap up. Okay. So I want to find out what this $405,000 that I get 25 years from now. I want to know what it's going to give me in retirement. Okay? So again, I want monthly income from. So 12 red PYR guys, you need to be listening to me, please.
That could be why.
Okay? So 12 red PYR, 405, 035.8465 present value. 3 I divided by YR. 240 in, because that's 20 years and 12 months. Right? 0 future value, and then I press payment. And it tells,
So you did 3% instead of 5%?
yeah, shoot, I did, so I need to correct that, because I said.
Well, I mean.
No, you're right, you're right.
My number is just a little bit different.
It is,
than
it should be,
3%.
it's because I said we're gonna invest this in our retirement at 5%.
What's the payment?
So we made a mistake there, Harry. How do we solve the mistake?
You can
You
just.
guys, you need to be
You
listening to
can
me,
re-enter the number.
okay?
So if you just recall your IYR, you can see what you put in.
Right, how do we solve the mistake?
Just enter the new one.
Just enter the new number in, as I divide by YR. So I'm gonna now put or 5 IYR, and now I can resolve present value. I don't have to do all of it again. My other inputs are still there, and now I'm gonna press PV. Yeah, I pressed PV and messed it up, so now, yeah. It's actually not at all forgiving, but fortunately it's also not terribly complex.
That's why Excel is way better.
Yes, but you don't always have your computer in front of you.
That's But do you always have your calculator in front of you?
When I'm in a business meeting, you're damn straight I do.
Okay, I believe you.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, you go into your business meetings armed to know more than anybody else in the room about what you're talking about. If you aren't armed that way, you're not prepared that way, don't go into the room. Okay? You go into the room, you know more than anybody else in that room about what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're collateral damage. I'm serious. They own you, you don't own them. Okay, so 240 in, 5 I divided by IR. 0 present value payment. It was 2,673, Harry, is that right?
That's what I got.
Good. Okay, so 2,673 and 6 cents.
So
That
that's.
number,
You got it right, you got it right.
CJ brought up a good point.
okay,
You got it right.
Today,
Isn't
or,
that what he just did?
that's in 25 years, right?
in 25 years.
We're back to who cares?
So we use
Yeah,
that
it's
Okay, so let's figure out what it means
to
now.
solve for present
Okay,
value.
guys, listen up.
Future value.
So,
But
It
that's
tells-
not only in 25 years, that's starting in 25
I know.
years for the next 20.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah. So think about this. So we just figured out that Wes is gonna get $2,673 a month off of this investment that he builds to $405,000 off of having made a contribution of $500 a month
For how many months?
for 300 months. And he builds it for 300 and he plans to draw on it for 240. 20 years at 12 months a year. Okay? $2,673. Now, you look at that, say, okay, I'm a retiree, my house is paid for, probably not buying new cars, not feeding households and such. Maybe I could eke out a bare existence on that. Could you?
Yeah.
I mean,
If that number lives in 25 years, the first time you get it, the last time you get it is 45 years from now. So I want to think about what would this number be in today's dollars, and I'd run this same kind of discounting at 3% inflation figured out. Okay?
So we use that as a future value.
Use that as a future value.
So is 3% inflation
Their food.
like a normal?
2.5 to
average?
3 points.
The bus.
Yes, 2.5 to 3. I think 2.5 might be a little more accurate.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So my point is, there's a lot you can do with this beyond valuation equations. There's a lot of consumer finance in this. We can also use it for valuation, corporate finance. Next week, I'll go through and talk about how you use the CFJ function. We did that once before, but you may not recall it. And as you were told, video 4 walks through that as well. Okay? Let me give you a problem set. Give that to Wes, the same thing, please. I think this might be the easiest problem set you'll do.
Are you serious?
I said, I think would be the easiest.
Yeah.
No, I really do, I really do.
If you think.
All you're really doing,
think the same.
all you're doing is you're estimating value using the free cash flow model. You're then estimating the exact same value using the KVD model. And then you're thinking about why the answers might be different.
So when you say show all of your work, do you want us to use the calculator or show you our Excel formula? Like,
Good question. So if you were my undergraduate course in corporate finance, I would want you to show me the handwritten equations, okay? If you were the senior level, and if this was going to you in the State Finance 409, I'd be okay with you using the time value function on the calculator. But you guys are master's students, do everything in Excel. Because you're right, why use the calculator or a pencil when you've got Excel? I want you to understand the calculator because you won't always have Excel. Okay. Yeah, you guys can use Excel. Where does it say show all your work?
in 1 and
Okay,
2
all right.
and 3.
And by the way, it says that because when I first created this, it was a test.
Okay.
It's part of the test.
How those courses have to do?
They did pretty well. They were upper division seniors, they did okay. And honestly, this is not that hard. You guys are gonna say, oh, I can do this. It's only 5 questions for heaven's sake. Okay? Not even 9 o'clock.
Yay!
Mission accomplished.
Woo! Are you serious?
There you go.